Episode 14, 2013. In telling this tale, I attempt no compliment to my own sagacity. I claim not to have controlled events, but confess plainly that events have controlled me.
Now, on Inside the Buffalo...
Wait! Can't use that title. How about this? All right.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Down and Drought, your weekly walk down memory lane with the Buffalo Bills and their 17-year playoff absence. You know what we're doing. I'm Prescott Rossi. He's Thad Brown. We brought John Kucko back in once again to discuss the 2013 Buffalo Bills. And we start on the first day of 2013, January 1st. Russ Brandon promoted from CEO to team president. And in the release, Ralph Wilson says, "I have granted him full autonomy to run the organization." Considering his humble beginnings as an intern, John, you knew him back in the day, to see him rise all the way up to team president after being GM and now CEO, what were your thoughts on this move that Ralph is really handing over the keys to Russ?
Well, I think this was a clear sign, and I think Thad would agree, that Ralph was in no position to have any day-to-day decision-making with the Buffalo Bills. So Russ was a marketing guy, came from marketing pedigree, and to put him in this role to oversee the whole shooting match, a lot of people met that with skepticism, and some of us in the media did certainly as well. Russ is a great guy, but he's all about marketing. Making personnel decisions, that's not his forte, but clearly it was a sign that Ralph was completely severing himself from day-to-day decision-making with the franchise.
This brand has been tarnished. Its relevancy has been tarnished, and it's unacceptable. Yesterday, when he provided me the opportunity and told me that he was passing the torch to me to run the operation with no restrictions or limitations, it was a very daunting, emotional day. And it's, like I said, it now stops and starts those final decisions with me.
You know, no one was really excited about this. It was warm and fuzzy from the, Ralph is near the end, and this is kind of his finger quote son, but that's about it.
Yeah, Ralph is 94 years old at this point. He says that Russ Brandon won't pick free agents, who won't be involved with draft picks, and that Buddy Nix is still the GM. He just now reports to Russ as opposed to reporting to Ralph.
Do I have final authority and say? Yes. But that's what Buddy Nix, the general manager, does. He identifies personnel. He runs that side of our operation.
Obviously, at some point, there's going to be, isn't there? I mean, you got to have a transition into something. I mean, a man's only got so much of this in him, 7 days a week, about 15 hours a day. The plan's the same. I mean, we want somebody that the transition's going to be smooth. He can make the next step, and he can.
I try to give Buddy the most accurate information and to what he needs to make his decision, be it personnel-wise or scout-wise or salary cap-wise or anything.
There's been a lot of speculation about what's going to happen to Buddy Nix. Chan Gailey's already been fired by this point. So, they've already broken up the Southern Voltron of Nix and Gailey. Will they, completely rid themselves of Nix as well? Well, as for that head coaching opening, Sunday, January 6th, Doug Marrone named the 16th head coach of the Buffalo Bills. They interviewed Lovie Smith, Chip Kelly, Ken Whisenhunt, and Ray Horton. We all know Doug Marrone was there at Syracuse, helped turn around a really moribund program, though he didn't have a winning record at Syracuse. But your thoughts on the regionalization goes to the east as opposed to up to Canada, it goes to Syracuse.
There was someone who reached out to me on Twitter in the end of December when the writing was on the wall with Chan Gailey and said, "What about Doug Marrone?" And I completely shot the idea down. I felt he hadn't done nearly enough at Syracuse. Like you said, they had gone to 2 bowls and didn't even have a winning record. I mean, that's better.
25 and 25
but
in 4 years.
Is that the kind of thing, wow, I want him running my NFL team? That was my impression with Marrone. And yet, there he is getting the job. And, we talked about Russ Brandon will not pick free agents. He will not make trades, draft picks. But he will apparently pick the coach. That's what we all thought about this deal.
And indeed, that was Russ's pick. And also the Browns were sniffing around Marrone as well. And I think I had the same reaction as Thad. But it can't be emphasized enough what Marrone did at Syracuse. And while the record may have not underscored what he did indeed, he inherited an absolute mess there, brought them back to somewhat respectability. But was he NFL worthy to be a head coach? there were a lot of question marks.
Never before in team history had the Buffalo Bills reached into the college ranks to find a head coach, but that changed here today in Orchard Park when the Bills introduced Doug Marrone as their 16th head coach in franchise history.
Today I'm experiencing another dream come true. You know, I moved on from Syracuse, you know, to be with this outstanding organization. I had some opportunities to make a choice, and I've chosen to be here. I can't tell you how excited I am to be the head football coach.
This much we can say. Coming off of Chan Gailey, I think it was a shot of youth, a shot of energy, and I know I was a little bit excited about it because given the previous head coaches with the Bills, we just didn't see that. I thought he would be pretty good at the microphone. I was wrong on that front. But I thought he brought a little bit of energy and some enthusiasm I hadn't seen before, and I thought that was a good thing. But like that, I was skeptical from the hire. I'm like, really? I mean, and one of our co-workers brought Marrone's name up a couple weeks before it happened, and I thought it was the most ridiculous idea in the world, and then it happened, so you never know.
His success at Syracuse was, you know, you emphasized, it was relative to what Syracuse had been.
I feel this town, and the core values here, again, are one of the things that I look for. I love the people here. We're going to be proud of this organization. When you're the head football coach, you know, you want to make sure that you're truly the CEO of the program. That you know what's going on offense, you know what's going on defense, you know what's going on in special teams. So from a management type of style, that's who I am.
Well, I think Doug distanced himself throughout the process. To have the opportunity to spend time with the other candidates was a tremendous experience. But Doug Marrone, as I keep mentioning, he's the right man to lead this franchise.
Right from the beginning, this is where I wanted to be.
You had a good story. You went to, what was it, like a business breakfast with Marrone and kind of got to see him a little bit. Yeah. Tell us that story again, because I was as skeptical as you were about Marrone, and yet this kind of made me feel a little bit of optimism at that time.
Well, I came away from it quite impressed. He can talk in a setting with business leaders. We were in Rochester. It was a gathering of about 200 business leaders from Buffalo and Rochester, and he sold a good talk. You know, he got you energized. He's a smart guy. He married an attorney. He's a passionate guy. In person, he's a lot different than he is at the podium talking to the media. And he energized the people there. I remember coming back up to the office to you that day, and I was wowed by it, and I was excited for training camp. Boy, was I wrong.
Well, and Marrone does have that NFL experience. He played in the NFL. He was the offensive coordinator with the Saints under Sean Payton. So he goes back to his alma mater and turns around a program. So I can understand that, like, the local boy makes good kind of aspect to this story. But, yeah, Russ Brandon even says at his introductory press conference, we wanted toughness, we wanted intellect, we wanted a culture change, a guy that will bring leadership, competitive leadership. Doug was a perfect candidate. And I think at that time, considering Chan Gailey and Dick Duran and, you know, even Malarkey and going back, like, so many of those coaches, you know, whether they were retreads or not, really didn't have anything inspirational. And this was a chance or a shot at something that was different compared to what they had, you know, hired in the last 3-4 coaching hires.
And even Marrone, in his first press conference, he preached analytics. You know, we're going to be cutting edge. And the guy couldn't stop punting from inside the other team's 40. So there's no analytics usage there at all. So.
And you talk about that first press conference in January. And I remember snapping a photograph of Mr. Marrone before he took the podium. And he had this Cheshire Cat grin on his face. Little did I know that he had that out in his contract, that he was probably ear-to-ear grin on, and we'll get into that later. But, you know, after that press conference, you know, we felt, well, all right, let's see how this ends up. It's a younger coach. Hadn't had that in a while. And someone maybe that could resonate with the players a little bit better than the coaches they had prior.
We knew the guy we wanted when we interviewed him. So... And there he is. So why go any further? If you do that, you lose the guy you want. And we couldn't have gone another day. We would have been starting over.
Being a head coach for 4 years at Syracuse has helped me. And for me, my one dream, which obviously became a reality, was restoring that program. To be able to get that program back on track and to create a foundation for it to be successful for a long period of time was important. Now I go into the next level, which is the highest level of my profession, and one I have a great appreciation for. So I'm truly excited about it.
Going after that, he fills out his coaching staff. Nathaniel Hackett and Mike Pettin are named the coordinators. Hackett, 33 years old, Pettin with much more pedigree in the NFL. And I think the pedigree hire, I remember at the time being like, oh, this is a guy that was, involved with Rex Ryan's Jets, was a big name for a defensive coordinator. I thought that was a really good hire, and it turns out that the defense turns around under Pettin.
Yeah, the only question with that was he was a 3-4 guy, and the Bills D was really built for 4-3, but obviously they figured it out. The other Marrone, do as I not do and not as I say, he said he wanted to get coordinators with experience, and he goes out and finds Nate Hackett, who had never been in the NFL before. So, right from the get-go, it's double speak with that coaching staff.
Yeah. So the Bills have to rearrange their roster now with a new head coach, and their free agency, the pre-free agency period is pretty turbulent for this team. Donald Jones not retained. George Wilson, Nick Barnett, Terrence McGee released. David Nelson not tendered. Chris Kelsay retires after 10 seasons. Some would argue he was there a bit too long to be on the Buffalo Bills. Sean Merriman retires. They've put a franchise tag on Jarris Bird, and Leotis McKelvin signs a new contract. So I just remember that turbulent offseason thinking like, well, the 2013 Bills are going to look a lot different than the 2012 Bills because we probably know they're going to draft a quarterback. Whether or not he starts and fits as the backup, that remains to be seen. But I remember thinking that, okay, this is going to be different. I don't know if it'll be better, but it'll be different.
A lot of those guys were bottom of the barrel, bottom of the roster guys. Merriman, Donald Jones had a kidney issue we found out later that was totally unrelated to football. David Nelson would really be out of football in a year and a half. So they didn't throw away a lot of, usable part. Kelsey, like you said, probably had been there way too long to begin with. So this wasn't a team that was, wow, how are they going to get along without these guys?
Yeah, George Wilson was probably the biggest loss as far as morale in the locker room because he just connected with everybody. He was a guy that everyone looked up to, but on the tail end of his career. So I agree with that. This wasn't a big shakeup where, how are we going to move on after this? That was not the case.
And I think George Wilson's story is pretty incredible. Going from a wide receiver, just kind of put me wherever, coach, and I'll see what I can do. And he makes it work, and he stays as a safety in the NFL for a long time. So I just thought, exactly, to your point, the Senator George Wilson was somebody that everybody could kind of get around. Tuesday, March 12th, right at the start of free agency, this is a day that I distinctly remember. 11:05 a.m., Deadspin.com publishes a prank phone call between Buddy Nix and Tampa Bay Buccaneers GM Mark Dominic. And in that phone call, which is just, it's unbelievable that this happens, they air grievances about their rosters and free agency. Nick says he's handcuffed because of Ryan Fitzpatrick's contract. 5 hours later, at 4:15, the Bills release Ryan Fitzpatrick. And they say, like, oh, no, the two things are not linked. But you couldn't help but see the morning's news become the afternoon's news. And, that was quite something to see Fitzmagic come to an end after quite a phone call from Buddy Nix.
The thing I always pulled out of that is, of course, it's the Bucs and the Bills. Yep. I mean, this would have never happened with the Steelers and the Giants or the Seahawks and the Patriots. Never. It was just these two teams. And I don't think it was really Buddy Nix's fault. He was the victim of a prank. Maybe you want to talk about better security for phone calls, whatever. At the end of the day, it was just wrong place, wrong time. But of course, it was the Bills.
Yeah.
Loose lips sink ships.
Yep.
And the Bills had a problem in this era of people yapping and getting things out. And this was an example of it. Maybe it wasn't, but there were things after this that would leak out mysteriously. And that was kind of the start of it, I thought. Yeah, and Fitzpatrick gone after a 20-33 record over 4 years. 4-22 in fourth quarter comeback situations. The height of Fitzmagic when they were 5-2 in 2011 was something. But yeah, it ended with a real thud. So now we know the Bills are obviously in the market for a quarterback. They signed Kevin Kolb on April 8th, and it obviously doesn't end well for Kevin. But I just remember thinking like, I don't think that fixes your problem at all.
No, he was the backup. I thought it made sense from they were going to draft the guy. Kevin Kolb was the veteran insurance, and I was fine with that. I didn't want Kevin. I think the thing I told everyone was, he's fine. Just hope he doesn't play 16 games for you because that's not how you want to have.
And he's not going to play 16 games for you.
And as it turned out, the guy they picked, they might have been better off with Kevin Kolb playing 16 games.
No question. No question.
The NFL draft begins on Thursday, April 25th. The Bills have the 8th pick. They trade it to St. Louis along with the 71st pick for picks 16, 46, 78, and 222. And with the 16th overall pick in the first round of the 2013 NFL draft, the Bills select quarterback EJ Manuel out of Florida State. And I went back and looked through Twitter, through my timeline, friends' timelines, completely panned this pick 100%.
There were no good quarterbacks in that draft.
It was a terrible quarterback class. And in fact, the 2013 NFL draft is bad throughout.
Oh, yes.
There are not good players in this draft.
Right.
But, EJ in the first round, it looks bad.
I was in New York City with the draft, and I remember talking maybe Ryan Nassib because of the Syracuse connection. And these are, a quarterback that went in the 4th round. There was no one. The Bills had painted themselves into a corner for months and months saying that we are going to draft a quarterback, and this is all that was left. I mean, you look back at that draft, the only thing the Bills really did wrong other than having to take a quarterback was just taking him in the 1st round. They could have waited till rounds 2 or 3 and gotten the same caliber of guy that wouldn't have worked out anyway, but at least they wouldn't have spent a 1st-round pick on it.
I think one of the things that you see when he walks into a room is, just his presence. And again, he's had great leadership ability at Florida State where he's been amongst his teammates. And I think that, one of the important things when he comes in here is, again, earning the trust of our players.
We think his faults can be corrected, the things that he does, and all of them had to have work, every one of them. This guy, to us, has got leadership qualities. He's very smart, and he's big.
I will say, though, the trade down was a great move because everyone thought the Jets were going to take Tavon Austin at 9, the Bills were at 8, the Rams were able to get in front or use the Jets as leverage to get the Rams in front, and they ended up with Kiko Alonso out of the deal, which turned into LaShawn McCoy. So the 1st-round pick may not be bad, but the long term wasn't too bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember when they made the pick, we were like, he was down there, I was up here, I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. We're just shocked. Shocked because there were no quarterbacks in this draft. This is not the way to get your franchise quarterback. And I think a lot of fans that night were deflated.
Yeah, and you talk about painting yourself into a corner, and a lot of the talk in 2013 is, of course, about how they have TJ Graham and not Russell Wilson. Along with, Dante Whitner over Haloti Ngata or Terrell Troop over Rob Gronkowski. And so the Bills are in this situation where, okay, we have to strike, we have to get a quarterback. And they're looking at a draft class with no good quarterbacks in it. And I just remember sitting in the media room at One Bills Drive and talking with Joe Biscaglia, who at the time was at WGR. And I went like...
also a monster Florida State fan.
And a Florida State alum. Yeah. And just being like, are they really going to go for Manuel? And he's like, everyone I talk to says they love him. Yeah. And I'm like, but did you watch him at Florida State? He's like, I watched him. The tape shows this is not a good quarterback. Yeah. I don't know what they're doing, but if that's the guy they want, if they get him, you can't say it was like the wrong pick for them to make, but it was obviously.
As bad as Manuel was, I really came out of that 1st round feeling okay because I wasn't shocked they picked a quarterback. And even though they had taken one that would not have been my 1st pick anyway, they still ended up they traded down and got extra picks out of the deal. So I felt like everybody knew what they were going to do, and they still, came out about as good as they could have come out of that 1st round.
Mel Kiper called EJ Manuel the 6th best quarterback he had in that 2013 draft.
And no one was good in that draft, quarterback-wise.
The Bills surprised a lot of people by taking EJ Manuel with the 16th overall pick, but he wasn't surprised. Manuel said today that he had a, quote, really good feeling about the Bills after meeting with Doug Marrone and the rest of the Bills brass. Manuel says he's the best fit in this draft for what the Bills want to do on offense, and he's ready to step in.
I think it's a matter of just getting into the offense, getting into the film room. I know the game, the speed is different. I think it's going to be a lot of adjusting to do, but, I played big-time football at Florida State, and, I played against NFL caliber guys week in and week out, so I don't think it'll be too much of an adjustment. There only needs to be one team that needs to fall in love with you. And, whether, it was the Buffalo Bills, the Philadelphia Eagles, Cleveland Browns, I knew one of those teams were going to take quarterbacks. I didn't know how soon, but I'm just extremely elated that, I was taking that 16 when I saw the Bills trade back. From 8 to 16, I knew they probably would take a quarterback, and when my phone rang, I was extremely excited.
Now, it turns out the Bills weren't the first team to call EJ Manuel last night. He says he got a call around the 3rd or 4th pick in the draft, and he was thinking, okay, I'm going to get drafted pretty early. Turns out it was the wrong number. Somebody was trying to get in touch with Oregon linebacker Deion Jordan. Fortunately for Manuel, he didn't have to wait too long to find out he had a new home. In Orchard Park with the Bills, I'm Prescott Rossi.
So 2nd round, Robert Woods goes pick 41, Kiko Alonso pick 46, and then Marquise Goodwin goes in the 3rd round, pick 78. And why do the Bills keep drafting speedy guys?
Small speedy guys.
That can't catch the football. Yeah. From Roscoe Parrish to TJ Graham and now Marquise Goodwin. Now they're on the same team, Goodwin and Graham. The trade makes sense, and obviously the Kiko Alonso pick pays off in spades. But then you throw away a 3rd round pick on a guy that you know what's going to happen with this pick.
Coincidentally, the guy who worked here before you did, Corey Happel, moved from Rochester down to Austin. So one of his jobs was to cover Texas football. So the Bills take Marquise Goodwin. I text him, Corey, what do you think of Goodwin? He goes, all he can do is run in a straight line. He can't catch. He can't run a pattern. He can't do anything else. All he can do is run in a straight line. I never heard a more damning recommendation or analysis of a draft pick, and he was right on.
Yeah,
he was right
100%.
on.
Yeah,
he can't stay healthy either. That was the other one.
Yeah, track star for the United States. So so that rounds out Duke Williams, Jonathan Meeks, Dustin Hopkins, Chris Gregg round out the 2013 draft class. And a couple days after that, Monday, April 29th, the Bills trade Kelvin Shepherd to the Indianapolis Colts for Jerry Hughes. And throughout this offseason, before the next big move with the Bills, the talk is who's actually running the show here, because these moves don't really seem like Buddy Nick's moves. They seem like there's a change in the Bills front office structure. Your thoughts on shipping Kelvin Shepherd, a guy who we didn't really see a lot of early in his career, for Jerry Hughes, who was a former first-round pick that really wasn't producing in Indianapolis?
Total trash for trash trade. That's all it was. It was a change of scenery thing. No one expected anything from Hughes or anything more than Shepherd would have given. There was talk about how Shepherd was kind of penciled in as one of the linebackers originally before Mike Pettin came in. Then it was Pettin's system that wouldn't fit. But there were no expectations for Jerry Hughes. I remember doing a story on him in training camp and talking with him and thinking, here's a guy I probably won't even have to talk to again after October. And he becomes one of the stars of the team.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember you doing that story. And look, when you look back at Doug Whaley's career with the Bills, you look back to this deal, because I think it was Whaley, and it was a great move. I mean, Jerry Hughes, other than the lack of discipline many times on the field, was a monster on that football field for that defense.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Doug Whaley. On Monday, May 13th, Buddy Nick steps down as general manager. After 3.5 seasons, becomes a special assistant. He's 73 years old.
There's never a good time personally, but for the Bills and for the organization, this is the best time. Starting next week, I was already had a flight and was scheduled to go to St. Pete to start on 2014 draft. And you sit there for 10 hours a day and listen to reports, one right after the other, on 2014 draft choices. And to be honest with you, my energy level is as good as it's ever been, but I wasn't all excited about that trip.
Nick says he will still be very active, still review tape of players, come to training camp here at St. John Fisher, just not call the shots. It's expected 40-year-old Doug Whaley will be moved up to GM.
Then a couple days later on May 16th, Doug Whaley promoted to general manager. So I just remember thinking that, okay, now we have a football team.
I think it's an organizational effort from top to bottom. And I think if you're committed to accountability and hard work, the sky's the limit.
We're all about accountability as well. From every person in this organization. And I mentioned back on January 1st that we share the fans' frustration and our stakeholders' frustrations over the past 13 years. But you won't hear us talk much about that.
Well, everybody liked Doug Whaley. I mean, at that time, you know, and even though, when he gets promoted in that press conference, one of the things they talk about is who was responsible for EJ Manuel. And he says, I was an integral part of that. I set the draft board. It was my draft process. I was in on that. And then he pretty much spent the next 4 years of his career trying to distance himself from that pick as much as possible. You look back at Doug Whaley, if he had not started with EJ Manuel, if they had just not taken a quarterback that year, you wonder if the whole image of Whaley going forward, because when they moved on to Tyrod Taylor, leaving EJ as the backup was something he pushed for, maybe overly so. It just seemed like
Sammy Watkins trade too.
Yeah, that comes up next for sure. But in terms of this pick, Sammy Watkins at least could play football. Yes. Whereas EJ Manuel could not. And if you had taken that away, and if his career had started out with Jerry Hughes, does the image of Doug Whaley improve so much that maybe we're still talking about him as the GM now?
When Whaley got elevated, the potential of tremendous synergy between him and Marrone, you got this youth movement, some energy. There were high hopes. There were definitely high hopes as you went into the spring and then the summer camp.
And you had Whaley recommended by Steelers people. That's where he worked before. You had Marrone highly thought of by Bill Parcells. I mean, the pedigree was...
And Sean Payton, too.
Exactly. I mean, the pedigree and the recommendations and the quality of those were all there for both these guys.
It's not about me. It's about us, and it's about this organization. And from Russ instilling in the organization that this is a shared common goal to put this organization back to where it's supposed to be, us competing consistently for championships, I think I buy into it, and that's my philosophy, and I think that's why we will all work well together.
Changing gears a bit with the Bills, the 2013 Bills, but I think it's a major storyline of this year for this franchise. Monday, June 3rd, Jim Kelly announces at his charity golf tournament that he has cancer in his upper jawbone, will undergo surgery later that week. June 23rd, Kelly reveals at his football camp that he's cancer-free. And then, John, a couple days later, you caught up with him at the airport. Just that month for you as someone who has a history with Kelly, what was that like for you?
Well, I mean, everyone has a soft spot for Jim Kelly. Bills fans, it certainly galvanized them. They threw all their support behind him. He got tremendous support, not just from Western New York, but all over the NFL community. And, you know, he's a fighter. Fans loved him as a football player because he was a blue-collar, Western PA fighter, and then they saw that fight off the field as a family man with a son, and now with a personal illness. So I think as far as Bills Nation goes, it galvanized everybody behind him. It was a very emotional time for people connected to the Bills, either with the team or as fans. And, you know, to see him emerge from that victorious, as Kelly often did, was certainly a positive. But it got a lot of people upset around here, no question.
And seeing him at the airport, you know, the interview you did with him, maybe kind of take me behind the scenes. How did that come together? How did that all
Well, he was taking a
work out?
private plane from Rochester down to New York, and oddly enough, to get some tests done, and he'd just come through some surgery and thought he was in the clear. And at one point, before he got onto the plane, he basically showed us exactly what was going on with inside his mouth, and it was an eye-opener. It was very much an eye-opener, and at that point, I was made aware of the severity of what he was going through. But, you know, he thought he was in the clear and things would worsen before they would get better. But, you know, this is before he lost a lot of that weight and looked a lot different than what we knew him as a football player. But, you know, Kelly is a battler through and through. That's what endears him to everyone in this region. And he fought through it. But at that time, it was a huge story in this area.
Another thing happening to me.
This for a guy who has had one ailment after another of late.
In the last 2 years, I've had major back surgery. I've had double hernia surgery. I just had neck surgery. And then prior to this, you know, being diagnosed with cancer, I had 2 jaw surgeries prior to that, not knowing that's what it was. But, you know, sad, you know, that, oh no, not something else. And then when you hear the word cancer, it scares you.
Kelly and his family are battle-tested. The challenges of life have made them stronger. That and the support of an entire region.
After I retired, my son's diagnosis and how much that hurt me and how much the community rallied around me as a father. And then, of course, the death of my son. It was hard. It's been hard on me for many years, but I'll tell you what. I wouldn't have been able to get through this, number one, without my faith. Number two, with the overwhelming response from fans and from people in general that just seems to really understand and care. And I just, you know, thank them so much because the letters that I've received, the emails, the phone calls, words cannot express how that makes me feel and how our family feels when you have so many people that care.
The Hall of Famer has had time to reflect on his own mortality, but is determined to turn this, like everything else, into a positive.
We all have a certain time limit that we're here, that the Lord has blessed us with, and I just hope mine's for many, many more years because I have so many more things to do. But the thing is, just never give up. Like Jimmy V used to say when he was diagnosed, you just never, ever give up.
Jim Kelly was such a star of my youth and for so many people in my generation. And yeah, to see him going through something like that, you know, cancer touches everybody in different ways, and whether it be family, friends, what have you. But yeah, to see such a hero in this region go through that fight.
And after what they went through with their child, too, with Hunter. I mean, this is a guy who had fought adversity off the field before and got the whole area behind him, and now here they go again with something serious again. But he, like we said, we can look back now and smile, and yep, that's Jim Kelly. He fought through it yet again.
It's not like having it in your arm, your leg, or anything. It's right here. It's very painful, but the thing is, it's just something else I have to deal with. And in due time, I will kick its butt. I will be all right, and I'll get back to my normal everyday thing, taking care of my 2 daughters and my wife and having fun again.
Moving on to training camp. Right at the end of July. Doug Marrone is the new head coach of the Buffalo Bills. His first training camp working with professionals as a head coach. And he gets 3 days in before he starts butting heads with the Western New York media because Mario Williams isn't here. And what's going on? Where's Mario Williams, the guy you spent $100 million on?
The doctors go through an evaluation process, and when they inform me, that's when I know. It's as simple as that. And I get frustrated, honestly, when it gets to a point where I feel like I've tried to explain myself and how I handle the injuries, okay? And I've answered the questions, and you keep coming at me. I'm done. I'm not answering any more questions about Mario Williams until the doctor gives me this.
So he is excused by the team?
Obviously, if we send him to get evaluations, he's excused from the team. That's not a legitimate question.
Yeah, that was the first real sign that I don't know that Marrone's going to get along well with the media.
And it never stopped all the way through the end of the season.
it was always combative.
And he never, the whole injury thing became a joke. It was something that he would, wouldn't take seriously, at least not with us. He'd try to turn it into something funny, and it never worked out for him. And that was definitely day one of that whole
And he would
deal.
deflect those questions to his PR guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, often at these news
under the bus
conferences.
all the time.
And that was an unfair position to put the team spokesman through. The team spokesman is not supposed to handle that kind of news. At least not in that setting at the podium after a practice or after a game. He would do it after games too. We'll get into that later. But he put his PR people in a bad spot, and it really set a bad tone early in camp for what was to come behind the microphone.
That was the beginning of the whole I'm not going to do injuries. Here's Scott in front of the microphone to do the injuries. And
Which is unheard of.
No coach had ever done that before until Doug Marrone, literally making his PR guy walk up to the podium and give the injury update for the head coach. And of course, the PR guy is not going to have anything substantial other than upper body, lower body, as basic as possible, which is helpful to no one, us or the fans.
And this was the start of a training camp that really had a lot of things happen in it. Because just a couple days later, Saturday, August 3rd, I was there for this one, but I did not witness this. I just heard about it because why would I have paid attention to this one specific tiny little moment? As transitioning from one field to another, Kevin Kolb slips on a rubber mat at St. John Fisher and tweaks his knee and is done for the rest of practice. And I remember I shot that practice at St. John Fisher, and you were like, did you get the video? Did you get the video? I'm like, video of what? He's walking from one field to another. Why would anybody have shot this? And just thinking like, oh no, here go the Buffalo Bills' Kevin Kolb. Who knows how long he's going to be hurt? Because again, Marrone's not telling us anything. And like, did Kevin Kolb tear his ACL on a rubber mat that had got a little bit of rain on it? I just remember thinking,
I remember that phone call.
I'm standing there like, I don't know what is happening to the Buffalo Bills as Kevin Kolb injures himself walking.
Injuries are a part of training camp. They happen. The goal is to do everything possible to limit those injuries to minor scrapes and bumps if you can. Nobody ever thinks about a rubber mat taking out a quarterback, but it happened today. Very few people saw it, but quarterback Kevin Kolb slipped while running on these mats in between practice fields. He grabbed his left knee and did not return to practice. Doug Marrone says that Kolb is day-to-day.
Riddle me that. And then at the same time as this is all going on, the PGA Championship is going on at Oak Hill, just on the other side of town.
Yeah.
And
just a little thing going across, the street.
And I just remember that week of just insanity, just working, 7 in the morning till midnight, 1 a.m., a thrilling week, a fun week, but an exhausting week as well.
Second time we had done that. And I think that we did.
First for me, second for you guys.
Yeah. We had done a lot less Bills coverage this time around. In 13 than we did in 03.
Right.
03, we kind of still went over to camp and did a little bit, and I think.
Oh, I remember 03. Mickelson went over there, right?
Yeah.
And Bledsoe wasn't Bledsoe. I'm trying to. I can't even keep my head on straight.
But no,
with
Mickelson
this.
was there a couple.
Mickelson went over there
too. Yeah.
I thought we stabbed the 13 one a little bit better because I think Prescott was there. Didn't you begin your mornings there?
I did a couple mornings there.
I can't remember the
because
specifics.
Marrone would have 8 a.m. practices, so you could go cover practice, get whatever the big storyline of the day is, then whistle on over to Oak Hill and be there for the rest of the afternoon.
And for those not familiar, I mean, the PGA Championship final major of the season was literally half a mile across the street from where Bills were holding camp. So we had monumental things going on in our backyard. And for us, being a CBS affiliate, the PGA was on our air. The priority that week, and you'll never hear me say this, the priority that week was the PGA Championship over the Bills. It's the only week out of a decade when that'll happen, but it did happen. But you were there covering that stuff, and I was stressed out about both issues, mainly golf.
We were pretty fortunate, though, that none of the stupid stuff happened that week. I mean, the Kevin Kolb mat and the Mario and all, all the other dumb Marrone stuff. Even the argument with Jerry Hughes about not running laps. That was the last day of camp, too, wasn't it?
No. That happens during the PGA Championship.
Was that week? Okay.
Because I remember that morning. No, actually, you're right. There were 2 incidents in morning practices during that training camp. One of them happened during the PGA Championship where it was like 94 and like 100% humidity in the morning, and guys were yakking on the field. And I'd never seen that at a Bills training camp. You think, NFL athletes, these are like perfect, human specimens, and here they are on the sidelines throwing up like at 8 in the morning. And it's just like, I'd never seen that before. But you're right. There is later in camp, Marrone gets into it with the whole team, doesn't like the effort that they're giving in, so he makes them run laps, and then Jerry Hughes yells back at him, and that leads to a whole shouting match. And none of it's suitable for television because it's just obscenities every other word from both sides. But yeah, that was quite something during training camp. But the last day of the PGA Championship on August 11th is the Bills' first preseason game, and I remember Jason Duffner wins the PGA Championship. All everything that had gone into that week culminates with that, him lifting the Wanamaker Trophy, and the Bills have their first preseason game, and EJ Manuel and the Bills carve up the Indianapolis Colts, and thinking, oh, this is different. Yeah. Of course, it's a preseason game.
At
Indy, how stupid could you possibly be to buy into a preseason game? But yeah, they thumped the Colts 44-20, 44 points, the most the Bills have ever scored in a preseason game.
I think it was one of the few preseason games I never actually watched. I don't think I ever watched it once.
We did highlights of it. I remember. No, that's right. I watched it because I had to cut the highlights for you guys for 11, and dude, they look really good. And
we had it on in the RV. In the RV at Oak Hill it was our command center, and we were all jacked up because we were getting his enthusiasm about the Bills looking like world beaters, and we're worrying about the golf show and everything else. But yeah, plenty of reason. 40-plus points in a preseason game with a rookie quarterback. Things are looking good.
And there's nothing like he looked in training camp either. At practice at Fisher, he did not look good. He did not look ready to go. I mean, by the next training camp, we were already done with him, kind of as a media. But even in this training camp, EJ Manuel is not performing to any kind of level where, wow, maybe this will work,
And then Friday, August 16th, their second preseason game, which you covered. I remember you shot that one against Minnesota. EJ Manuel gets hurt in that game and is done for the preseason. Yeah. So the glory of EJ Manuel lasts all of 5 days because now he's got this injury concern that lingers over the rest of the season.
It was a scramble. I remember the play pretty distinctly. I think a scramble going away from me.
Yep, to the Vikings sideline.
And it was, if I remember correctly, it was also way too late in the game for him to still be in the game, even as a rookie.
Probably.
So it was again, controversial. Doug, what are you doing with your rookie quarterback? Why is he running? Why is he hurt now? And it was just another poor decision, poor game management, poor camp management from new coach Marrone.
And then in the third preseason game of 2013 against the Washington professional football team, Kevin Kolb suffers a severe concussion, his third severe concussion, that ends his career. Kevin Kolb, we hardly knew ye. Yeah. So EJ Manuel is definitely the guy. There's no doubt about it. They've traded for Thad Lewis. They have an undrafted guy in Jeff Toole. It's EJ or nobody.
In 14 seasons of covering the Bills, I have never seen a single practice that contained as much news as we got from the Bills today. First, the biggest surprise. It seems like a very real possibility that Jeff Toole, an undrafted rookie, could be the Bills' starting quarterback week 1 against the Patriots.
Right now we're planning on, Jeff Toole playing, the first game, okay? And we're working with EJ to get back as quickly as possible. The good part about it is, yesterday he worked out on the field. He's working back there, so he's actually starting to move around now. And then it's just a matter of how he heals and he repairs. And when he comes back, he'll be our quarterback.
It's a true blessing, and thank God for the opportunity. And it'll be a lot of fun to line up from a childhood idol, like Tom Brady.
The Bills needed bodies at quarterback, so they traded with Detroit for Thad Lewis and signed Matt Leinart, the former 2006 first-round pick.
I still got a lot of football left in me, and this business, as you guys all know, is as crazy as it can be, especially at the quarterback position. You just never know what can happen. So my main focus was just to keep my head down and keep working and keep chipping away and hopefully, hope for an opportunity.
The other injury news today, even worse. Corner Stephon Gilmore out 6 to 8 weeks with a wrist fracture.
Every defense wishes they had, Stephon or, a really good corner like that. But, some of the things we do, it puts a little more stress on them. Like I said, I don't know what our plan will be going forward. Obviously, get him healthy as soon as we can.
And Jairus Byrd, he is mad about the franchise tag. And I just remember, one guy being brought up to the podium after another of, wow, the Bills season has imploded and we haven't even hit week 1 yet. It's amazing. And then to just add that little cherry on top, the Bills bring in Matt Leinart for one preseason game. This is the most we will ever talk about a preseason. Well, 2016 was pretty good too. Yeah. But Matt Leinart goes 3 for 10 in a preseason game. And I shot that preseason game. He's walking off the field talking to Reggie Bush. And, he looks to him and he just goes, "I'm done."
Yeah.
And you just go like, "Wow." Matt Leinart, one of the greatest college football quarterbacks ever, talking to his former teammate from USC and Reggie Bush, and was like, "Yeah, I'm done. I'm done. I can't do this anymore."
Oh man, it's crazy.
Sure enough, the next day, he gets released by the Bills, and that was it. And I think I'm the only person out there, because I doubt Reggie Bush is going to sign with another team. I think I'm the only guy out there that covered Matt Leinart's last game, Vince Young's last game, because he was with the Bills the previous season, and Reggie Bush's last game.
Wow.
I don't know that anyone else can say that.
Trifecta.
I can say that. So there we go. And then something happens in training camp that I remember when this happened, and this was so bizarre. CJ Spiller, his step-grandfather, kills 2 people, shoots 2 more people, then kills himself. And CJ Spiller, you think of him as like a pretty mild-mannered guy, you don't know these guys all that well. You obviously don't know their families. And then just like that whole story was something that was just on top of everything else that had gone on during this offseason, was really strange. I don't know what you guys thought.
It was hard to cover,
Yeah,
because it was a relative, but it wasn't a direct relative, and it was obviously a grisly story. It was, for us who cover sports, they call it like the sandbox of TV and broadcasting and news. It wasn't the type of thing that we cover a lot. And to really, you felt like you had to talk to CJ about it, but no one wanted to. Yeah. So it was something you tried to tiptoe around, and it was just very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I remember, because I was doing sports back then and doing numerous what we call A-block hits on that in the higher part of the newscast to talk about something non-football related. And like you said, it was just a grisly, bizarre thing that we're not used to discussing on the air like that, but it was just another thing. Opener hadn't even gotten here yet, and all this was going on.
I'll be sitting here lying if I say I'm going to put it behind me. It's still early. There's still some emotions there. But, for the most part, once I touch the field, my main focus is on football, and that's how my whole family wanted it. That's how my mom wanted me to do. She told me when I came back to make sure that my focus is on getting ready for New England.
I told him, when I talked to him, he's not just a teammate, he's like a little brother to me. So I did everything I could, to try and help him get through, the tragedy that he was going through. And it means a lot, and I'm glad to have him back here. Hopefully we can get his spirits back up.
And then right at the start of the season, Tuesday, September 3rd, after the Bills had released Ryan Lindell on cutdown day, the Bills signed Dan Carpenter after Mike Hopkins, or
Dustin Hopkins,
whatever, injures his groin. So yeah, Dan Carpenter, that's a name we'll be talking about for the next few years.
Think about it. The Bills spent a draft pick on a kicker with the intention to make him the starter, the kicker. Teams don't usually do that. And then the guy blows out his groin a week and a half before the season starts. That was that preseason for the Bills. Nothing went right.
It really didn't. And then week 1, we finally get to week 1 of the 2013 season. September 8th, the New England Patriots come to Ralph Wilson Stadium 10 years after 31-0 with Sam Adams on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And it looks like EJ Manuel might lead the Bills to a victory against the New England Patriots. Bills led 21-17 going into the fourth quarter, but the Bills never got out of their own territory whenever they had the ball in the fourth quarter, and Tom Brady's on the other sideline. So, yeah, leads him down the field. Gostkowski, go-ahead field goal with 5 seconds left. The Bills fall in the season opener 23-21. Tom Brady now 21-2 against the Bills.
The story out of that game, though, was EJ. For week 1 against New England, granted it was home, he didn't throw 8,000 yards, but he threw
150.
Right. He didn't look terrible. There wasn't an interception. There wasn't a terrible negative play. So the most of the talk about that game was, hey, EJ wasn't too bad. Good first step. There was encouragement. I mean, losing to New England is like a rite of passage in Buffalo. So it wasn't a big deal. But the fact they lost close and the quarterback didn't fall on his face was a good thing.
Yeah, I think the vibe was good. They hung with these guys, the mighty Patriots. It was a good sign. I don't think anyone expected them to beat New England on that day. They didn't get blown out. It took the Patriots at the very end to pull that thing out. So I think there was a good feeling in the region about this team after one game.
Yeah, and the defense is playing a lot better as well. Brady is sacked 3 times, hit 7 times. You just feel like, okay, the Mike Pettin Bills defense is going to look a bit different than what we saw under Chan Gailey and everyone else.
It's the next game, though.
And
got
of course,
fired up.
And the next few games, too, because Mario Williams in week 2 plays out of his mind, sacks Cam Newton 4.5 times. Kiko Alonso has a sack, an interception, 9 tackles. EJ Manuel throws for 296 yards and has a game-winning touchdown to Stevie Johnson with 6 seconds to go. Bills come back and beat the Panthers 24-23 in Newton versus Manuel. Which looks real bad now, but a real outlier now.
That might be the first time that game was billed that way, I think, ever, going all the way back to 2013. But no, the defense, this is where the defense, everyone really started to believe in it, and what Mike Pettin was doing, and what this D-line could be. Jerry Hughes wasn't quite there yet, but Mario was doing his thing, Marcel and Kyle Williams. I mean, these guys looked like world beaters.
It's just different, the whole team and the mentality, especially mine. I don't think I've felt that way in the last 5 years, so that's great, and I finally feel like I'm at peace, just as a person.
We can do good things. We've got some good players. Schematically, we do some things that give people trouble, and I think as far as we're on the tip of the iceberg here. Hopefully we're only going to get better and better the more time that we go.
And then now look. EJ had a game-winning drive, but it was the worst game-winning drive in the history of game-winning drives.
You were there. You shot it.
It was a dump-off and a dump-off. He hit Fred Jackson and C.J. Spiller led the team in receptions on the drive, and even the touchdown. And this is when the first couple years I started really watching Bills film and doing the All-22 thing. The touchdown play is like your run-of-the-mill. Defense comes with an all-out blitz, and one of the things quarterbacks will often do is I'm just going to throw it over them and hope to catch a long pass deep down the sideline. I'll let a good receiver go one-on-one. There's no real thought involved. It's just, throw it deep. And that's what EJ did on the play. Now, look, was it the right call? Yeah, probably. And was the pass in a good spot where Stevie Johnson could catch it? Sure. But this wasn't like, staring down a blitz and, reading in between safeties and zing. This was, bailing out and just heaving and hoping. It worked. So you combine it with the dump-offs, and he had a huge pass interference penalty that negated an interception, and, the way the drive ended. For people were like, wow, EJ can play. And I kept on looking at that drive. I'm like, there's nothing good here. There's nothing about this drive that makes me think EJ Manuel is going to be a good quarterback.
Excellent sound effect by Thad. I was in the tunnel as the guys were coming up, and you thought they won the AFC Championship after that. There was a raucous atmosphere as they were coming up. You were on the field, and you came up with them. There were now, and I know you weren't enthused about the drive, but a W is a W.
For sure.
They're 1-1. They almost beat New England the week before. Hey, we might be onto something here.
We hand someone the ball. We expect them to be able to do things like that. I know it doesn't happen that way all the time, but our expectation is for us, he's our quarterback. We expect him to lead us down the field and score and win. And I think that if I lowered those expectations, then we probably wouldn't be sitting here right now.
I think I started crying there. I'm not usually an emotional guy, but like I said, I'm going to enjoy those type of things because that's what I'll be able to tell my grandkids about that, 20, 30 years from now. So it's definitely a momentous part of my young career.
He was locked in. He wasn't saying I need you or I need you. He was in here like the number one quarterback that he is, and he drove us down there.
Week 3, the Bills go on the road for the first time in 2013. They go down to the Meadowlands against the Jets. The Jets commit 20 penalties for 168 yards, but Justin Rogers is starting for the Bills in their secondary because of injuries to Stephon Gilmore and the like, and he gets burned. He gets
multiple
roasted.
Times, yes.
Stephen Hill has a 51-yard touchdown. Santonio Holmes has a 69-yard touchdown, all on Justin Rogers.
Thrown by Geno Smith, by the way.
Thrown by Geno Smith, who threw for 331 yards in this game as the Jets win 27-20. And I remember thinking, this is the Justin Rogers game. Everyone talking about that afterward of, this guy who does not belong in this spot and he's undersized. He's just getting roasted by better. And I wouldn't even say Stephen Hill is nothing special, but he took him to school.
Yes. I remember being in the press conference, the post-game press conference with Doug Marrone, and Marrone talked about, they committed 20 penalties, and I think the Bills won that turnover battle 2-0 in that game too. So Marrone is there talking about all the good things that they did, and I remember thinking, all these things that you did, that no one should ever lose a game doing, and you just lost this game, and it was 27-20 only because the Bills scored last. The Jets dominated the game.
I knew we were going to, a big part of the offense is trying to get big plays, and, it's just not making enough plays. They made more than us. I got to make more plays.
Everyone's going after, our secondary, and, we just have to do a good job, and, we're trying to change things up, for him coverage-wise and pressure and do that to try to keep the quarterback, thinking. But, hey, when they bring the pressure, block them all up, and, they went one-on-one. It's just the point of, we didn't make those plays.
Just one you don't want to remember at all, just, one of those days. So, as fast as you can, move on and get it out of your memory.
The era of unbridled optimism lasted 1 week. But then it comes back again the following week, week 4, September 29th against the Baltimore Ravens, as Joe Flacco picked off 5 times, twice by Kucko Alonso, once with a minute and change remaining. EJ Manuel, 10 of 22 for 167 yards. These are looking like Lossman numbers.
Yeah.
Touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a fumble. Jackson and Spiller combined for 164 yards. The Bills win 23-20 as the defense looks incredible, minus the guys in the secondary.
And this was, we probably should have brought this up back in the Carolina game, but this was when the hashtag The Legend of Kucko Alonso was
Yes.
born, which was one of the more fun trends that lasted about 10 weeks. But this was when it was, man, after that Baltimore game, The Legend of Kucko Alonso was, flying high and was on T-shirts. And he was a weird guy to talk to because he was, I think the best way to put it is he was smart, but he wasn't very bright, if that makes sense. He was intelligent, but there just wasn't a whole lot coming out of him.
He didn't say much.
It's extremely important. We want to go every game and come out with a win. That's what we're here to do. We just want to win games, and every game's going to be like that. Every game's going to go down the wire. We're going to have to make plays and fight for 4 quarters. That's how every game's going to be.
Yeah, I remember. I don't remember exactly what day this happened, but I remember this moment when Doug Marrone was asked about Kucko Alonso and just how incredibly he's playing. He's named Defensive Rookie of the Month for September, and Marrone says that he was in the hot tub with Kucko Alonso, and they were talking about finances.
Yes.
And he's just like, this is a very, and to your point, it's like, this is a very intelligent mind who has a lot of thoughts about a lot of things. And so everybody was just like, Doug Marrone and Kucko Alonso sharing a hot tub. Like, what the heck is that? So, this was it was during a Bills Wednesday, and I remember they opened up the locker room. We all swarmed to Kucko Alonso's locker, and so what was the hot tub like with Doug Marrone? Like, that was like the level of discourse that you had with Kucko, because to your point, if you asked him about, hey, what do you think about the Jets and their offense? Like, he wouldn't tell you anything. So, all right, well, we got to come at it from a different angle to try and get something out of it.
And because there was the legend of Kucko Alonso, when that story came out, we all felt like we had to go talk to him about it because this was something that was pertinent to the legend, which we never got any stories about.
Yeah. Week 5, the Bills go on the road for a Thursday night affair in Cleveland against the Browns. John, you and I were there for this one, and this one was an entertaining game, though not for all the right reasons. Brian Hoyer tears his ACL on a hit from Kucko Alonso 4 minutes into the game. Bills trailed 17-10 at halftime. CJ Spiller rips off a 54-yard touchdown right at me. It was awesome. And then EJ Manuel sprains his left knee because he doesn't get out of bounds. And then in comes Jeff Toole, throws a 44-yard pick six, TJ Ward, as the Browns beat the Bills. It's not 6-3, but 37-24 still doesn't look good.
Yeah, that was a late night, and we remember well because we had to get all this sound regarding EJ. We had to get all this sound regarding Toole to our affiliate out west and so forth, and we were there till, I think we were at the stadium till like 2 in the morning or something.
It was a late night for sure.
But it was an entertaining game. I certainly remember your touchdown with CJ because the first thing I always ask when I go down to the field when these guys were shooting the games are, tell me you got the shot. I know where you guys are on every play. I'd have a habit of watching where they were positioned, and he came right at you. It was a thing of beauty.
Yeah.
But that was, again, here goes EJ, frail EJ Manuel, and the injury occurs.
He's trying to score a touchdown. What do you say? Don't scramble. Don't what? Don't score touchdowns. I mean, what do you think? Go out of bounds. I'm sure he's working his way to the sideline.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's nothing we've been able to find a common denominator on. But shoot, you tell me what it is, and we'd give anything to find out. But yeah, our injury situation isn't great, but with 10 days rest, hopefully we can get some guys back.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's uncommon. That's just adversity. You're going to face adversity, and we don't face adversity early on in this season, and I think it's going to really make it even more sweeter in the end. But it's just next guy just step up and try to make a play.
So the Bills are now without EJ Manuel moving forward. Week 6, Thad Lewis is in for EJ. Andy Dalton picks the Bills apart as the Bengals led 24-10 going into the fourth. Dalton throws for 337 yards, but Thad Lewis, Thad God, leads an incredible fourth quarter comeback, a 22-yard touchdown to Scott Chandler, then a 40-yard bomb to Marquise Goodwin with 1 minute and 8 seconds left. Thad, as the preeminent Thad in our sports office, just your thoughts as Thad Lewis leads the Bills in this incredible comeback to tie it and then bring the game into overtime.
I think I was the president of the Thad Lewis fan club. No one was more excited to see that than I was. Although I remember being on the sideline for that game and thinking Cincinnati was just giving the Bills opportunity after opportunity to stay in the game. 2 or 3 spots where a field goal would have put it away, and that would have been it. But regardless, Thad Lewis gave the Bills some hope that he could actually be a functional backup quarterback. They had no business being in the game. They had no business getting to overtime, and they ended up losing, which is what they should have done. But we had some fun in the fourth quarter with Thad.
Yeah, I think we were shocked that they were even in that position. And like he said, we were thrilled that a guy named Thad, other than this one, was doing good things.
The touchdown to Goodwin was really nice.
Oh, yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was a great ball.
Perfect placement. Mike Nugent kicks a 43-yarder in overtime to win. Bengals win 27-24. Week 7, the Bills go to Miami. The defense steps up again. Nikel Roby, pick 6. Aaron Williams with a pick deep in Bills territory. Mario Williams has a huge sack on Ryan Tannehill. Bills trailed 21-17 going into the fourth. The script writes itself once again as Lewis, Spiller, Jackson, and Tashard Choice have big plays in the fourth quarter. Dan Carpenter bangs in a game-winning field goal with 33 seconds left. The Bills are 3-4, and they're not a good team, but I think of them kind of like the 2010 Bills, when Stevie Johnson emerges in that first year with Chan Gailey, and thinking like, okay, they're not good, but they're entertaining. And after the last year of Chan, I'll take that.
The defense was fun enough by itself.
Exactly.
By this point, people are starting to really, really buy into the defense. Not only as, wow, it might be good, too, we can hang our hat on this. This is something that we know the Bills are going to do every week. They're going to terrorize opposing quarterbacks. That game entirely turns on Ryan Tannehill throwing a pass from midfield, or attempting to throw a pass, in a spot where the Dolphins probably should have just been running the ball out. And not only did it go bad on Miami, but the Bills made them pay for that choice.
Yeah.
I think fans were excited about the fact that if you leave your quarterback open for even this much, our D-line is going to run him down and kill him.
Yeah.
Or force a turnover, and which I think both happened in this case.
And Carpenter goes home to South Florida, where he spent a few years and got a little bit of a revenge at the end.
So the good feelings for the Bills defense, they don't last very long, because week 8, the Bills go to New Orleans, probably the greatest city in the United States, and Drew Brees carves them to pieces for 5 touchdowns and 332 yards. Thad Lewis injures his ribs during that game. The Thad Lewis fan club takes a big hit in this one down in NOLA as the Saints win 35-17.
Biggest thing that came out of that is we had a lot of Rob Ryan file that we used when Rob eventually came to Buffalo. I shot him up and down the field pregame, made sure we had a lot of
Hard to miss.
Yeah, exactly. It was, easy to shoot and fun to get. But that whole game was New Orleans being New Orleans. I mean, just Drew Brees hitting deep balls, throwing passes all over the place, scoring 35 points. I walked away from that game thinking, I got my money's worth. I went to New Orleans, had a good time in the city in Louisiana.
Yes, he did.
And yes.
My memories of New Orleans have nothing to do with the game, but with my buddy Thad. And it was Halloween weekend,
that's
too.
Right.
There's nothing like Bourbon Street, Halloween weekend. We're up on the balcony. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, we had a great time. Many beads were garnered that day.
Move on.
Scene missing. Move on. Week 9, Jeff Toole is now the starting quarterback because Thad Lewis has injured ribs and EJ Manuel has an injured knee. I shot this game against the Kansas City Chiefs. And Jeff Toole has a 59-yard touchdown pass to Marquise Goodwin in the first quarter. Bills up 10-3 at halftime and have the ball to start the second half. Toole marches them down the field. They get inside the red zone, inside the 5. I believe they're at the 1-yard line.
At the 1, yeah.
And Jeff Toole and I make eye contact as he goes to throw this football, and then in comes Sean Smith, takes it, and he just gets smaller and smaller in my camera. A 100-yard pick 6 off Jeff Toole. And like, wow, you go from 10-3, possibly 17-3 to 10-10, like that. And that's Jeff Toole. That was the Jeff Toole experience in one play.
It's very frustrating. I mean, especially to come out in that second half. I mean, first big play with CJ, put a drive together, get right down there, and then, I mean, just literally just a complete other direction. Like you said, it's just a huge momentum shift. So just something that I could have prevented from happening.
And remember, the Chiefs were undefeated that game, too.
They were 8-0 going into it.
So Jeff Toole, Jeff Nobody, is leading the Bills at home. I mean, not only leading the Chiefs, but dominating the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And then on one play it flips, and the Chiefs pretty much own the game from there, and that was so Billsy.
Yeah.
And you look at all these things. You go back to the start of training camp, to game 8 of the season. All these games that happened in a season that, if you just looked at the record, would have been totally not noteworthy.
Yeah.
And the different little twists and turns. Every single one of them, for the most part, are as Billsy as it gets, except for maybe Mario Williams sacking Tannehill to force the fumble and lead the game with a field goal. It is nuts to think about the amount of stuff in the first 3 months of the Doug Marrone era.
And that's 8 weeks in, right? That's 8 games
This is
in.
week 9,
Yeah, week 9. So, this is, I think after this, you're clearly deflated as a fan base. Like you said, the Chiefs were 8-0. You've got these guys kind of where you got them early on, where you want them, and then Toole does the unthinkable, and the rest was history there.
It was, it was one of those moments where, you hear the crowd like, no, somebody stop him. And you realize he has daylight. Just 100 yards of green in front of him. And and then it wasn't even the end of the pain, the Billsing scale, as TJ Graham fumbles at the 11, Tom Bahali picks it up and returns it for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Chiefs go to 9-0, they win 23-13. So week 10, EJ Manuel returns after 5 weeks. The Bills go to Pittsburgh. And Manuel doesn't look particularly good. Throws for 155 yards, a touchdown, sacked 3 times. Steelers win 23-10.
Total Steelers game. Just like the Saints game 2 weeks before. Just the Steelers coming out and throttling you. Antonio Brown made one really cool play. They score a couple touchdowns, kick field goals off turnovers. It was exactly what you'd expect from that game.
Yeah, so the Bills dropped to 3-7, and we know what they are. They're not a playoff team. They're not a very good team. They have entertaining moments, and there are parts that you could say, okay, there's something for the future. But year 1 of the Doug Marrone era, you know that this team is looking to 2014 and beyond. Week 11, the Bills host the New York Jets. Bills have a 20-0 second quarter. Manuel to Graham for a 34-yard score. Manuel to Goodwin for a 43-yard touchdown in the third. Jarris Byrd picks off Geno Smith twice. Denora Cersei has a pick 6. Thad, as a Jets fan, just your thoughts of the Bills and Manuel.
The Jets were coming off a bye that game and just did not show up. And Rex Ryan at that point was dealing with lots of questions about preparing his team out of a bye. They were generally pretty bad out of a bye, and this was like writing the script. Denora Cersei, that interception return right into my lap. One of my favorite plays ever. I had it all day. But from the EJ Manuel point of view, the TJ Graham touchdown, the winds were crazy that day. So the TJ Graham touchdown, Manuel lofts it up, and there were 2 Bills receivers and 3 Jets defenders in the area. And I remember following the ball in the air, and it gets to here, and then it just stops. It comes down. And what had happened is a wind gust had knocked it down right to where Graham was standing. So he's like, okay, caught it and just walked into the end zone. It was like the worst 50-yard touchdown pass you've ever seen thrown in the history of football. But everyone came out of that like, wow, look at that play EJ made. He scored 2 touchdowns, and we won by 23 at home against the division rival. Woo! I mean, it was that, and I quickly got into the habit of picking apart good EJ things because it wasn't hard to do. This was just another example.
And Thad, you mentioned Rex Ryan and game preparation. Well, this is the game where the night before, the Saturday before, Rex takes the Jets out to Dave & Buster's.
Yes.
It's amazing how Dave & Buster's keeps just popping up and down and drought. So the Jets go to Dave & Buster's the day before this Bills game, and the Bills then throttle them 37-14.
Because Rex was out of things to do off a bye week. He just did not know what to do to get his team ready.
So the Bills go into the bye week at 4-7. Sunday, November 24th. This is a name that will be a big part of the 2014 episode. As Jason LaConfora of CBS reports that John Bon Jovi wants to buy the Bills along with the Rogers Communication Group and Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment in Toronto. And this is coming with the Toronto game the following week for the Buffalo Bills. And I just remember thinking, Bon Jovi owning the Bills in a year where with so many insane things, Bon Jovi owning the team might be the craziest if this were to actually happen.
The thing that I thought was craziest is what happened after that, where Buffalo pretty much disowned Bon Jovi and any Bon Jovi produced piece of music for the next foreseeable future until the Terry Pegula came and finally bought the team. It was, John Bon Jovi was enemy number 1, but it didn't seem very logical. And coming from Jason LaConfora, he almost became enemy number 2 coming out of this too because he reported it.
Yeah.
The only reason there was a little glimmer to this was because Bon Jovi did have a little bit of a history with Belichick, with New England. So we knew he would hang around the NFL scene a little bit. Not a whole lot, but we'd seen pictures of him with Kraft and with Belichick. But
and Philadelphia, too. He owned the AFL team down there with...
Very good point. So, I mean, it was outlandish, yes, but, the thought of it sickened people in this area. And he was vilified and still is to this day.
Yeah, it sure is. And then a couple days later, on December 1st in Toronto, 38,969 people at the Rogers Centre, the lowest of the Toronto series. was a pretty entertaining game, but nobody was there to watch it. And just Thad being north of the border for what now becomes the final game of the Toronto series.
This was the game the Bills found every way to blow late.
Sure did.
Stevie, let's see, if I remember correctly, they have the ball and the lead. They fumble.
Can Thad remember?
Yes.
I have it right here.
Let's see. So it doesn't matter who it. Stevie Johnson.
There's no question whether Thad can recall this with pinpoint accuracy.
It's
That's
only
not up for debate.
It's only 4 years ago, not 14 years ago.
Stevie Johnson had the overtime. No, he had the regulation fumble that led to the tying field goal, and then it was Chandler who fumbled in overtime that led. Yeah, I mean, this was. You looked at at this point in the year, you're like, oh, so the Bills donated a game away by fumbling the ball twice. Oh, okay, I know exactly where that story is. Hang on, let me pull that one up. I'll just write it again.
Twice in about a minute, too, just considering the time on the clock.
Yeah.
Stevie fumbles with 20 seconds left at the Atlanta 20, so the Falcons just kneel. It goes to overtime. Bills get the ball to start overtime. Scott Chandler fumbles on the second play of overtime, and then a few plays later, Matt Bryant kicks in a game-winning field
And the
goal.
Falcons were pretty good that year, too.
Falcons were good, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, you had them and you had the Chiefs on the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
And
the Patriots in week 1.
Exactly. Within the last 2 games within a month of each other, and obviously, 3 teams in the same, the first 3 months of the season, to not be able to finish it off, this team's going to finish 6-10. You'll walk away from it thinking if they could have found 2 or 3 plays, they might have been 9-7 or a little bit better.
I caught it, ran across the field, and guy came from behind and ripped it up. So yeah, I was just running with the ball. I knew we damn near had the game sealed with that, and he came from behind and made a play, hell of a play.
It was a great throw by EJ out in front, and right as I put the ball away, I didn't get my hand underneath it enough, and the guy hit it right on the ball and just knocked it loose.
No matter if you're a veteran or a rookie, you catch the ball and you tug it. He made a play, and that's what it is. That's what we got to charge it to. It ain't like we had the ball loose or outside of our body. They made a good play, and got to commend them on it.
Really disappointing. Obviously you want to be able to protect the ball in that situation, and you want to make a play that helps your team win, and not the play that really turns the tide to make your team lose.
You can't say, hey, it was a big spot and this and that, blah blah blah. You feel me? We had opportunity with Carolina at the end, and we made it. So we can't knock it, can't play it as if there's always something bad going to happen.
We want to bring this town, this region, the playoffs, and to know that that kind of slipped away on that play it's tough, but that's part of what we do. We put we're putting ourselves out there. You want to be, if you want to be a guy who's making plays for your team, then you're going to have to deal with the disappointment when you don't make the play.
We're a good team, and period. No matter how this game went, we're a good team, and we know we are. You know what I'm saying? It's just take more time.
This game had a stench through and through, not just because there were a lot of Atlanta fans there taking that little 3-4 day getaway to get into Toronto and enjoy a nice weekend away, but because of the whole Bon Jovi thing and some of these Toronto tabloids really playing that up, it just really rubbed Bills fans the wrong way. And I remember after that game, we were locked in on the whole Bills ownership thing at that point, and the thought of going to Toronto was still lingering all over the place. It just was, and it was a horrific atmosphere. The Rogers Center is not an NFL venue. Yeah. It should never be an NFL venue. And when it's half empty like that, or a third empty, or whatever it was, the whole thing stunk.
And they even had Cy there, Gangnam Style. That was the halftime show.
No, I thought he was the Seattle game. Wasn't this the Beach Boys?
It was.
Oh, it was Beach Boys.
This was the Beach Boys.
Okay.
Yes.
So
there we go.
Wow,
yeah,
that was the most legit part of the game.
Wow,
I guess.
some real trivia from us. We know the halftime shows of the Toronto
And
series.
they have good pudding in the Rogers Center press box. 'Cause I used to always take a picture of 4 of the cups in front of me as I was watching the debacle that was unfolding.
One of the few halftimes I made sure to get out, because normally halftime for us when you're on the field working the game, you got to go in, hit the bathroom, get something to drink, get hydrated back up. And for the Beach Boys, I'm like, this is the Beach Boys. I probably should go out and see it, and
so you can say you saw Mike Love and Brian Williams, Brian Wilson, excuse me. So
way past the height of their prime.
Yeah, about 50 years later. So, but in the aftermath of a game seen by 39,000 people, Russ Brandon says the Toronto series needs to be reevaluated, and they had recently signed a 5-year extension, which would have carried the Toronto series through the 2017 season. So imagine if we're still talking about those games now. But yeah, so I think to me that's kind of where 2013 ends, even though the Bills have 4 games left after this one. They get their doors blown off in Tampa. Now, I know you were down there for that one. They win in Jacksonville. I don't remember that game at all, along with the shutout win over Miami. And then I do remember the Week 17 loss in New England, not because the score was 34-20 or that Thad Lewis was the quarterback, but because it rained the entire game, like 38-degree rain, and I just remember being on the field miserable. Like,
sopping wet.
A 6-10 football team getting blown out by the Patriots on not even New Year's Eve, on the 29th.
You can't ignore the fact either that was, as we alluded to earlier, that was the EJ Manuel injury game where, he missed the game before, and Doug Marrone said 100% he's going to play the last game.
Oh, that's
and then
right.
he doesn't play the last game and gets taken to task for it, and that becomes a thing between the Buffalo News and Marrone. Another, that was the end of Marrone can't deal with the media, and this was the final straw about, you said that Manuel was going to play, and then Manuel didn't play. And I remember thinking, I don't care, if things change. I mean, medical statuses change, but the way Marrone presented it as he is going to play and I am right about this.
Yep.
And then, of course, he didn't play because there were a lot of reasons for, he's your first round pick.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The game didn't mean anything. And he could have, if I'm the coach and I think he's going to play 10 days before and he gets this much worse in between, I'm going to sit him for sure, and it's a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
But because Marrone had no idea how to deal with it in front of a microphone, he looked terrible.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that press conference where he said, 100% EJ Manuel is going to start. And then, no, really? You're going to do this? And because it's now 2013 and social media is pretty much what it is at this point, we're there covering these press conferences and tweeting out these quotes, and people are like, has he lost his damn mind?
Yeah.
And so you're seeing the responses while Marrone's talking, and so you take the feedback from fans and go like, Doug, the people, what are you talking about? Everyone's mad at you right now. And so, yeah, it was, one of those moments where instantaneously, not only the media present is questioning Marrone's decision, but people just following on Twitter and social media, they're screaming what is he doing? Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think that was probably, those types of moments were my lasting memories of 2013, is Doug Marrone saying things and putting himself in position where you're not going to get, who are you supporting by this? Because your quarterback's I don't know why I'm playing, and the fans don't like him. Marrone just seemed so in over his head in these types of moments.
And there's nothing worse than ending the season in Foxborough, because inevitably it's going to be a loss, and you've got the long drive home back to Western New York to just contemplate what you had just covered the prior 16 Sundays or weeks of football. And it usually is the same story over and over. We certainly have been through a few of those rides, and I know we were as well. And, any kind of enthusiasm we felt with Marrone when Whaley became GM, and the synergy that was there with this young group, this core, was gone now. Pretty much gone.
Yeah, I was going to say just
another Bills season without a postseason.
I was going to say just your lasting thoughts, your final thoughts on 2013 and 6-10 all over again.
Marrone couldn't coach, Manuel couldn't play quarterback, and where are they going to go? The defense is really good.
Yeah.
Now, and this began the run of, the defense is good and the offense can't play, or vice versa. It seemed like we did that for the next 3 or 4 years. But the two most important parts of that team, the head coach and the quarterback, neither one of them seemed anything close to functional.
Yeah.
And it was hard to figure out whether they were going to go forward with that.
Year one under Doug Marrone was not necessarily about making the playoffs, but certainly taking a large step towards them. So how far did the Bills go?
Not as far as we wanted to, but I definitely think there's things going in the right direction. When people are willing to do whatever it takes and put in the work, we can be a really good football team. But in the same sense, we showed how bad we can be when we kind of take things for granted.
My final thought was, man, I was lucky to experience those Bills Super Bowl teams, because this sucks.
Yeah, it really did. It really, truly did. And none of those two guys, Marrone or Manuel, gave you any confidence going into 2014. And when you think about the Bills' offense, Spiller is clearly a very good running back, though he has his limits. Fred Jackson's looks like, he's probably getting toward the end of his career, a very serviceable running back in his time. And Stevie Johnson has only 570 yards receiving this season. And you go well, the receiving core doesn't look great. The running backs are good but have faults. The quarterback is clearly limited. The tight end position, who knows what the heck they're doing with that. When you look, just down the division and see the guy from Western New York that's becoming a Hall of Fame tight end. Those were my memories of 2013, of just wondering, where is this team going after this season ended?
And it leads right into 2014, which was the number one thing people wanted going into next year, was the Bills need a receiver. They need a big-time receiver to support this young quarterback who has looked clueless so far.
There are a lot of great players in the 2014 draft class playing at wide receiver. Who will the Bills select? To that, we turn to the 2014 episode of Down and Drought.